Hello and welcome to another video by Day Night Gaming. In this video I'm going to be discussing stat weights in the MMORPG known as Final Fantasy XIV for the Shadowbringers Expansion. So today I want to discuss with you stat weights, but please keep in mind that this is very specifically for the Shadowbringers Expansion for level 80 characters. And the reason why I say that is as new expansions come out, if you're watching this at a later date and a new expansion has come out after Shadowbringers, the developers have probably tweaked these numbers to make the system more balanced out, as they have done in the past, as well as you level up, these stat weights get much heavier and heavier. So what I mean by that is, as a level 80, let's say we'll use skill speed as an example. I have 911 skill speed, and that yields to me a 2.45 second recast on my global cooldown. But if I was to switch to, say, a level 73 character with comparable amounts of skill speed, you'll notice that here I have a 917 skill speed, but I have a global cooldown of 2.42 seconds, which is a 0.03 second difference. So as you can see here, as you level up, you'll need more skill speed to get the same effect as lower levels. And that's really just a balancing reason. The developers tailor each dungeon and each boss fight by eye level. So as you increase in eye level, you're going to notice that your skill speeds for level 80 are going to be, very different than your skill speeds for a level 70 with, say, 390 eye level. Alright, so now that we've discussed the differences between expansions and level, let's now take a deep dive into the stats themselves. So I'm going to use my level 80 paladin as an example. So as you can see here, we're going to first talk about HP. And the way HP works is it takes your type of class, say tank or non-tank, and it multiplies your VIT. So for non-tanks, they're going to multiply their vitality by 22.1. So that means all healers, all caster DPS, all melee DPS, all range DPS, they'll all have roughly the same amount of HP if they all have roughly the same eye level. But then at the same time, you'll notice that tanks have much more HP because they multiply their vitality by 31.5. So even though all these classes will have the same vitality at the same eye level, you're going to notice the tanks are going to have a much more HP pool, and you're going to notice everyone else is going to have the same HP pool. Because vitality is the same across all the gear at all eye levels. So, like at 490 or 500, all gear at 500 is going to have the same vitality, regardless if you're a tank or a DPS. Alright, next I want to discuss Piety. Now please keep in mind that Piety is only for healer classes, and what Piety does is it increases the MP regen rate that you'll normally have. But please keep in mind, like I said, it only affects the healer classes, which is currently White Mage, Scholar, and Astrologian. Even though my character as a Paladin has access to heals, as well as a Red Mage also has access to heals, they do not get any benefit from Piety. So it's very important that non-healers do not touch Piety at all. It will not help them in any shape or form. For a Paladin, 340 Piety is the same as 0. 3000 Piety is the same as 0. So do not Materia meld Piety into a class that cannot use it. So next I'm going to go into Tenacity. Now Tenacity is a very specific stat for the tank class. That means Tenacity does not help melee DPS, physical range DPS, magical range DPS healers. It does not help them at all. So only a tank can get any value from it. And what it does is it affects the amount of physical and magical damage dealt and received, as well as HP restored. The higher the value, the more damage dealt and the more HP restored, and the less damage taken. Now once again, this only applies to tanks. Tenacity doesn't help any of the other classes. Now also keep in mind that I personally did not meld into Tenacity. The only Tenacity that I have comes strictly from my gear, and the reason for that is it takes quite a large amount of Tenacity to make any noticeable changes, which I'm going to show you in a second. But yeah, keep in mind, I personally, as a personal preference, do not meld for Tenacity. So basically the way it works is it goes by a multiplier. So at 380 Tenacity stat, we have a damage multiplier of 1, which means there's no change. The number is as it is. There's been no increase or anything. My mitigation is also at 1, so you won't notice any change at 380. And if I went to, say, 1936, you'll notice my damage multiplier barely went up. For almost a 2,000 investment, it only went up 0.047. So that's like almost negligible. And my mitigation went up to 0.953. Tenacity, we're going to compare the two stats. So as you can see, the numbers are barely noticeable at all between these two. So I mean, you're mitigating 0.047% damage. That's like almost nothing. So personal preference, I don't see any value in Tenacity, so I personally don't stack it, even though I am a tank. Alright, so now with those out of the way, let's talk about main stat. So the main stats are either strength, dexterity, intelligence, or mind. And each class will only benefit from one of these stats. So for Paladin, the main stat is strength, which means I get 0 benefit from dexterity, intelligence, or mind. 0. They don't help me at all. My mind does not affect how potent my heals are. This potency goes off my strength. The dexterity won't help me with my, attack speed or whatever. It does 0. The intelligence will not help me with my magic DPS spells. This, like Holy Circle or Holy Spirit, they go off my strength when they figure out their potency. So keep that in mind. Main stat is the only stat that matters out of these. So in case you're a brand new character, you're a level 1 character, and you don't know what your main stat is, just all you have to do is go to the market board. Let's pretend I'm a level 1 paladin, or level 30, I guess, paladin. Okay. From here, when I look at the market board, if I'm, say, a level 30 paladin, I can only see up to level 30 stuff. So what you want to do is you click the head, then you click this level section, change it to 80, then click the head armor again. Go to the top choice you'll see here, and as you can see, for this exact example, Neo is Guardian Cap Defending. The main stat here, the only stat that they show is Strength, which is plus 287. So that's an easy way for me to tell what my main stat is if I didn't know already. And you can do that. Let's say I'm a bard and I don't know what my main stat is. So bard, let's say I'm level 30 bard. Okay. So now with level 30 bard, I'm gonna change it to 80. Click the head slot again. So as you can see here, Neo is Guardian Cap of Aiming showed up. And Dexterity is the only main stat on this list, so that's how I would know. For my Bard, my main stat would be Dexterity. So you can do that with any of the classes. That's how you would determine what your main stat is. Alright, so once again, keep in mind, you only benefit from the main stat that you have. The other 3 main stats that aren't for your job give 0 benefit. Alright, so with all that out of the way, now let's discuss MP. So MP in Shadowbringers Expansion, regardless of your level, is always going to be 10,000. You cannot change this number. That's always what it's going to be. And they've done that so that they can easily balance out the MP cost of all the spells. So, in case you're wondering, no, you cannot change this number. I guess if maybe you were a different class, say like an armorer, they don't even have MP at all. But if you're a class that does have MP, it's only 10,000. Alright, so now let's discuss the secondary stats. So first off, let's start off with critical hit. So going back to elegantstudies.ockmorning.com. So as you can see here, critical hit does two things. As you raise your critical hit, you're going to also increase the rate at which your critical hits land, as well as the bonus efficiency of it. So critical hits can increase the amount of damage that you do per attack, but it also can increase the potency of heals that you do, as well as the potency of heals over time that you do. So it's very important to take note of that. It can do that, and not just bonus damage, but it also can determine bonus healing as well. Now, critical hit and direct hit rate, they all have diminishing returns. So as you increase your critical hit, you're going to get less bonus pound for pound, but it's still good to stack whatever stat you want to stack. So I'm going to open this up, and we're going to go to critical hit, and we're going to search up 1000 critical hit. So at 1000 critical hit versus 380, you're going to notice that, as you can see here, 380 has 5% chance to land versus at 1000 you have 8.7, and the increase of damage goes from 40% to 43.7. Now let's move this up to say 2000. So as you can see here, now you have a rate of 14.8% with a bonus of 49.8. And then of course level 80, it starts to become very easy to get over 2500. Even my tank has a critical hit over 2500. So as you can see here, from the difference between 1000 versus 2500 is a 17.8% rate with a 52.8% increase. So that's much better than if you had 380, which was at a flat 40% on your bonus increase with a rate of 5%. Alright, so now that we've discussed critical hit, now let's discuss direct hit, because a lot of people get confused on direct hit. So direct hit, what it does is when you're landing an attack, you have a chance to deal an increase of 25%. Now, it's very important to note that a long time ago, old players might remember that there wasn't a stat called direct hit. Instead, it was called accuracy. And what accuracy used to do is increase your chance that you might hit. But now we have 100% hit rate, pretty much. So there is no need for an accuracy stat. Whenever you do an attack, you're going to land it, as long as the monster isn't using something that will negate it. So they changed it to direct hit. So every time you do land an attack, direct hit, if you land a direct hit, then you're going to do 25% flat increased damage. So what direct hit stat does is the more you put into your direct hit, increases the rate or frequency in which you're going to land a direct hit. Okay, so at 380 you have a 0% chance to land a direct hit, but then at 1000 you now have a 10.3% chance to land a direct hit, and then at, let's say, 2000, as you can see, the rate is at 27.0%. And then let's say at 3000, you have a 43.6% chance to land a direct hit. So your rate at which you're going to land them is going to increase significantly, but the damage is always going to stay the same at 25%. Now it's important to note that direct hit only calculates on damaging effects. So direct hit will not increase the amount of healing that you do. It's not going to increase the amount of healing over time that you're going to do. So if you're a class that doesn't have access to heals, then it is definitely viable to go into direct hit. It can yield some really good numbers because the frequency in which they come out. So let me show you the difference between direct hit and critical hit. So we're going to go into critical hit, and we're going to look at 3500 versus 3500. So someone who has 3500 crit rate is going to land a crit at a frequency of 23.9%, but they're going to get a 58.9% increase of damage. Whereas a direct hit with 3500 rating, they're going to have a frequency of 52% of the time that they land an attack. They're going to get their 25% increase in damage. So direct hit becomes much more frequent the higher that you put your direct hit stat into, whereas crit hit will do more damage pound for pound. So it's up to you. It's all personal preference which of these two stats you want to lean into. Just keep in mind that if you do have access to heals, critical hit can affect the heals, but direct hit cannot. Alright, so now let's talk about determination. So what determination does is it just increases statically your damage or the heals that go out. So every time you land an attack or every time you land a heal, your determination will give you a certain percent increase. It doesn't matter on the rate, it's always gonna increase every time you do something. But the numbers are very low. So let's say at 1000 you're getting a damage multiplier of 1.026 or a heal multiplier of that every time you attack or every time you heal. But it's a very low number, so let's go to 3000. As you can see here, you're only getting 1000 or 1.104 increase. It's still an increase across the board no matter how you look at it, but it's not as high of a number because the diminishing returns are actually quite steep. So here I'll show you right here. So at 1000 versus 3000. Take it as you will. It's up to you if you want to put determination. It does not hurt you to put into determination. No matter what, no matter how you look at it, it's an increase across the board all the time. So it's not a stat that you want to ignore, but just keep in mind that stacking it really high doesn't yield too big of results. So as you can see here, my determination on my paladin is 2,292. My crit rate is 2,799. And that's because in very few places did I actually meld in determination. Personally, I tend to like to meld in critical hit and direct hit before I meld in determination on all my classes. This includes healers. Even though direct hit does not increase my heals, it does increase my DPS that I will do as a healer. Alright, once again, that's personal preference. I'm not saying loading into determination is bad. It's just, please keep in mind that it does have some really strong stat weighting to it. Alright, so now that we've talked about those, let's talk about skill speed and spell speed. So, the difference between skill speed and spell speed is skill speed targets global cooldown abilities, while spell speed targets spells that have a cast timer that does not say instant. So skill speed is for cast timers that say instant, and spell speed are for cast timers that actually have a cast time innately part of the ability. So using a paladin example, since they use both global cooldowns and spells, spells like Holy Spirit, Holy Circle, and Clemency will use spell speed, but abilities like Royal Authority and Fast Blade and whatnot, those use global cooldowns, so those use skill speed. So looking at a white mage, something called Glare, that's a spell, has a cast timer. So because it has a cast timer, it uses spell speed. But also, please take note that spell speed also affects how quickly your dots and your heals over time activate. So spell speed has that added bonus. So as you can see here, my Glare has a cast time of 2.42 seconds. And that's because my spell speed of 1153 has reduced it down to that number. But then if you look at my Paladin, my Clemency has a cast time of 1.5. And that's the base cast time. Because my spell speed of 380 wasn't enough to bring it to the next tier, and my skill speed did not affect it in any way. Now, as you can see, my recast is 2.5 because my skill speed also doesn't affect it. So even though my recast timers on my weapon skills have a 2.43, that's because they use skill speed, but my spells like Holy Spirit, Clemency, and Holy Circle, my recast time did not change, just like my cast time did not change, because I don't have enough spell speed to get into even the next tier of spell speed. Same thing with my Holy Circle, as you can see here. So my spell speed was not enough to augment those spells in any way. But my Fast Blade has a recast timer of 245 because my skill speed was able to bring it down from 250 to 245. Alright, so now let's go ahead and look at Elegant Studies again. We're going to open up skill and spell speed, and we're going to show off how this chart works because it is kind of confusing. So as you can see here, I have my mouse highlighting the different sets of skill speed. So at 390, the dot scaler is at 1. So there's no change in dot speed at 380. And the same thing with my global cooldown, 1.5, 2.0, 2.5, 2.8, 3.0, and so on and so forth. None of those have changed at a stat of 390. So as you can see here, my spell speed is 380, so of course I have no change in tiers. Now let's highlight over, let's see. You know what, let's look at Fast Blade real quick. So my Fast Blade has a recast timer of 2.45. Now normally that's supposed to be 2.50 without any skill speed change, but because I have a skill speed of 911, I go from 2.5 into 2.45, as you can see there. So let's go ahead and open up 911 on the search bar. As you can see there, 2.5 changed into 2.45. Alright. So now with all of that in mind, now let's see. Let's open up my Samurai. Okay, so this is a good example. So my Samurai has a skill speed of 1242, as you can see there. So my 2.5 global cooldown was reduced to 2.41. And now let's go ahead and give a skill speed buff. So I'm going to use the combo bonus from Shifu. Let's see, where's Shifu? There it is. So Shifu reduces my auto attack delay and my recast timer by 13%, which is huge. It's like, that's really big. So anytime that you have an ability that can basically increase your bonus, you're going to notice a big change. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Remember, right now I'm going to combo into Shifu, and there's the buff, and now my recast timer should be 2.10. Yeah, there we go, 2.10. So as you can see, that's a noticeable change, is because that stacks on top of what your skill speed rating is. Alright, okay, so I'm still in combat. Give me a second while I disengage. Try putting away my weapon. Anyways, it's okay. Going back to the website. So, as you can see here, and scroll down, right? It takes a lot of investment into skill speed or spell speed, right? To get to each of the tiers. And any amount that you've spent in between those tiers is wasted. So a good example right here is we're looking at 2.5 seconds global cooldowns at 990 stat. We have 2.44 global cooldown, and it doesn't change until 10:15. So if you put 10:14, you still wouldn't have any benefit from 990. You have to go to 10:15 to get the next tier, which is 2.43. And then from 10:15, you have to go quite a long way. What, 11:16, I believe? No, hold on, let's go to the next page. 11:16? No, 11:17. You have to go to 11:17 in order to get any gain. Alright, so taking a look at this, you're gonna see that it actually takes quite a lot of stat in order to increase. So remember, so we were at, what was it? 10:15 to get a 2.43 second global cooldown. And all the way up to 11:16, it is still 2.43 second global cooldown. So there's actually no change whatsoever between 10:15 and 11:16. And you need to get to 11:17 in order to get it down to 2.42 second global cooldown. So if you were at 10:15 and you put in a skill speed Materia 8, which gives plus 60 to your skill speed, you're going to go from 10:15 to 10:75, and you're not going to gain anything. So you definitely want to check the website to make sure that in any time that you're going to meld Materia, that you want to make sure you're actually going to benefit from doing so. Because remember, at 2.43, you need to get to 11:17 to get any benefit whatsoever. So even if you're at 11:15 and you put 100 more Materia into it, and you're going to go to 1:15, that's still nothing. That's a lot of Materia investment to not gain anything. So you want to make sure that whenever you meld, you get to that next tier, so you don't waste any Materia. Alright, so with all that in mind, let's see, 1 second. So yeah. Make sure you always get to that next tier before you invest any Materia in there. And please keep in mind, I mean, it takes a lot of investment to get into the higher areas. So also plan out your rotation to make sure that you can make use of these increased speeds. Because let's say you're on a 10 ability rotation, and increasing your skill speed or spell speed won't fit in another ability in that time window, then really isn't a point into increasing it. So you really want to map out what rotation you're going to be using. Now, of course, if you're using it for faster heals or faster heals over time or faster dots, then yeah, the investment could be great. But you always want to make sure that it's worth it, because like I said, you're investing a lot of the times more than 100 stat in order to get these small increases. So you want to make sure that each time you do it, that it is worth doing. Oh, I'm still in combat. Oh, give me a second. Let me run away. Put away with my weapon. Okay, wow. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Is this far enough? Alright, this far enough. Alright, so now that we have all of that out of the way, now let's talk about melding. So as you can see here on my ring, I have 2 open Materia slots. As you can see there under the Materia, you see 2 green rings. Right? So, you know, I can meld this myself, but it's probably better that I teleport to a materia melder. So you know, I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So let me teleport to Limsa. No, you know what? Let me teleport to Yulmore. Yeah, Yulmore sounds better. Where is that? There it is. So teleporting to Yulmore, and I'm gonna locate an NPC, which is called a Materia Melder. So he should be. No, not there. There we go. Materia Melder. And they're usually right next to the Materia vendor in any of the cities. So Materia Melding. Alright, inventory. Now let's go to equipped. Alright, so Crystarium Ring Offending. I can meld into this ring. I can meld 2 slots in. And underneath at the bottom you can see that I have a critical hit of plus 45 out of 207 already on the ring. Which means this ring at this eye level cannot go above 207 critical. That includes the base stats as well as any materia I'm going to add in. So let's go ahead and pay the fee to meld in Materia 8 for critical hit. That'll give us plus 60. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Let's see. Yep. So submit request. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to pay 1,600. Totally fine. And as you can see now, one of our green dots is filled up with materia. And now I have a critical hit of 205 out of 207. Which means this ring can only hold 2 more critical hit. So if I was to put in another plus 60, I'm only going to gain plus 2, as this tooltip says right here. So I definitely don't want to do that. I don't want to be wasting a materia slot on such a small game, especially an expensive material like this. So that's where you start to consider the other stats that you can add in. So in this case, I'm going to add in direct hit. And as you can see here now, I can put in plus 60, and it'll be plus 60 out of 207. Good to go. I totally fit it, and I won't lose any wasted stat points at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. As you can see here, direct hit plus 60, submit request. Bada bing, bada boom. Now it's melded. Alright, so now let's talk about advanced materia melding forbidden. So as you can see here, blue gear has a maximum amount of materia slots, which means you cannot go beyond the green open holes. But then crafted gear, even if it only has 1 green open slot, generally speaking can go up to 5 melds as long as it doesn't say it's forbidden like the blue gear did. So I'm going to go ahead and look up Neo Asgardian Ring Offending. As you can see here, crafted, it does not have a forbidden tooltip there, and it has only 1 open green slot. But as you can see here, my melded ring has 5 slots, one of them being blue, the other 4 being red. What that means is it's over melded. So you can possibly meld more than that 1 green open slot, but every time you try to meld something in there, the chances of it actually succeeding on the meld get worse and worse. So when you try to get to that 5th slot, you'll probably only have a 5% chance to meld into it, which means you're going to be breaking a lot of materia just attempting to put it in. Please keep that in mind, so make sure that you have quite a lot of spare gil if you're going to go through that route. Also take note that there are some gear that have green open slots that go all the way up to 5. Good example are the relic weapons. They have 5 open green slots, which means you have a 100% chance to meld into those all the way up to the 5th materia, which is really powerful. It's really great. Alright, so with all of that in mind, I hope all of this helped you out, and it gives some clarity onto min-maxing and what type of stats you want to allocate to materia. Lastly, please keep note that if you're over-melding beyond the original green sockets, that you can generally only over-meld 1 rank 8, so the remaining over-melds max out at rank 7 materia. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider smashing that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe and ring that bell for notifications on future videos that I might be posting. And until next time, take care. Goodbye.